Well, good morning or afternoon or whatever time you're watching this. Here we go. We are talking roles of the president today. We're beginning our unit on the president, and so these are some of the basic roles that the president has. Kind of plays like they wear a lot of hats. I don't wear actually I wear hats a lot, just not wearing right now. So there's a lot of different jobs of the president. There's really not one job. There's a multi job event there. So let's. Oh, that doesn't help me. Lots of jobs for the president. So let's get started. You should have a worksheet. You should be writing this down, providing examples that hopefully I'm going to be talking about, and kind of defining what these roles are. All right, here we go. All right, first role is chief of state. I'll move myself here, get in the way of President Obama throwing his pitch. The chief of state. So as you recall, there's a State Department, right? The state, remember, is our country. The State Department deals with other foreign countries. So the president is our symbolic leader. He is the kind of the living symbol of the country. Whereas some countries actually have a different head of state. Like for instance, Great Britain would have the prime minister runs the government, and works with Parliament and creates law and taxes and things like that. But the Queen of England is really the head of state, like she is the representative embodiment of Great Britain. So they've got the Queen and they've got the Prime Minister. So they're not always one and the same. Kind of the leader of the country is not always one and the same. But for us, we've got the president who acts as the chief of state. So this is symbolic leader. This is when they would somebody's what's called a state dinner, and you'll have a foreign leader, might come to the country, and the president would host a dinner with that leader and their entourage, and maybe that leader's spouse, and that would be his function of a chief of state, which is a little bit different than chief diplomat, which we'll get to later. They relate, and there's some overlap of kind of those responsibilities. But chief of state is, hey, welcome to the United States. You're our, kind of living embodiment of the country. Okay. Next, it's called chief executive. So the chief executive is he's in charge of the executive branch, right? This picture here is the cabinet. And there's another. It's going to relate to chief administrator, which I'll also cover. But the executive branch is the federal government, and so he executes law. The president is supposed to make sure laws get followed, and the various agencies and departments execute and enforce law, right? So, for example, if the tax law changes and the say taxes decrease, like President Trump brought about a decrease in taxes, it's the job of the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, to collect those taxes. And in theory, the president is in charge of the Internal Revenue Service and needs to make sure taxes get collected. So the chief executive, which falls along the lines of the chief administrator, and the administrator is supposed to, once again, oversee all these millions, 2.7 million workers, million civilians that work in these various agencies. This is President Biden's cabinet. You can see it's COVID friendly here with their spreading their social distancing, their masks, 2021, and so it's not a lot of real difference between administrator and executive. I think the executive you can probably more is working with the various cabinet level positions, talking with the secretaries of Treasury and State and Agriculture and all the various agencies, and kind of overriding all that. And the administrator would be doing, it's a very similar role. I'm not sure why they actually have two different, but you would often call them chief executive. The administrator is just making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. I don't know. We'll leave it at that. The chief diplomat. So I mentioned chief of state before. Chief diplomat is the diplomatic powers that the president might have. They recognize foreign governments. They work with foreign governments. They offer diplomacy. They might have treaties with foreign governments. They need congressional approval and Senate approval for those treaties. But those would all be related to this diplomacy. So if the State Department has has offices throughout the world, embassies, that's the word I'm looking for. So there'll be ambassadors that represent the United States throughout the world, every country that we officially recognize. I just saw today that President Biden had kicked out Russian diplomats and from Washington D.C., 10 of them, and there's going to be some. Biden issued some fines, so withheld some money from Russia, froze some assets perhaps, and they're not happy with Russian involvement in our election. They're not happy with there was a pay to paying people in I think it was somewhere in the Middle East or Afghanistan to kill American soldiers. There was like this pay to I forgot the terminology, pay to kill them. And that was kind of acknowledged or at least discovered about a year ago. So there's some things the Russians have done. They've put troops on the border of Ukraine recently. And so Biden kind of went after them with some sanctions and kicked some people out, kicked diplomats out. And then return, just this morning I saw that Russia has kicked 10 diplomats out, Americans, from Moscow. So ambassadors, staff, a lot of these people might be CIA related and basically spies anyway, or Soviet spies. But anyway, that's diplomacy, and that would be another primary duty of the president. The president is the chief legislator. Chief legislator. I'm moving myself up here so you can see it. And what this really means is there's the only official role, congressional role the president has is he can sign laws or veto laws. All right, he can basically that's his role in lawmaking. But in reality, the president can insist on or urge Congress to pass laws that he likes, and the president, can actually kind of basically give lawmakers, members of Congress, laws, propose laws, bills, and say, hey, you should try and pass this. I want to sign this. And so the president can set the agenda for big time laws that he might want passed, he or she might want passed. And so that is it's a big deal. And they will often push and they will often prod and they will often talk to individual members of the Senate or the House to try and get things done, work with the Speaker of the House, work with the majority and minority leaders of the Senate to get laws passed. They want to be remembered for laws. So like President Trump's, one of his big ones, once again, was that tax cut. And on the flip side, Biden is talking about minimizing that tax cut and changing some of those laws. So, you get a new administration and new things might happen. President can also veto a bill where they can send it back. And then, of course, that veto can be overridden with a 2/3 vote. There's something called a pocket veto where the president can let a bill die by not signing it. And then if Congress adjourns, leaves within 10 days submitting it, if the president doesn't sign it, then it also doesn't become law. If Congress is in session, he doesn't sign it, then actually it does become law. So there's some nuances there. But the president is highly involved in legislation. When they're running for office and they're saying all these things they want to do, when I'm president, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll raise taxes, I'll lower taxes, I'll pass a Green New Deal, I'll provide health insurance or whatever they're saying. All that comes from law. So whatever they're saying on the campaign trail, for the most part, they've got to pass a law. And there's something called an executive order, which we'll get to in a little bit, which is kind of like a law, but it's not exactly a law, that the president has some direct power over. But for the most part, if you want to stick, it needs to be law. And so the legislation is a big deal for the president. Okay, the president is commander-in-chief, commander of the armed forces. If you look at these these armed forces down here on the bottom, there's one missing. There's a new one. And, maybe you can jot down what the new one is that was actually created by, not by law, but by the president as the chief executive. Chief executive can, can rearrange things, can create things. And so as part of the military, being commander in chief, the President Trump added a new one. So you can write that down in there. It'd be interesting if you know what the new thing is, what the new, we got the Air Force and the Navy and the Army and the Marines and the Coast Guard, and there's a sixth branch of the military at this point. Okay. So at the end of the day, though, the president is in charge. He's the commander in chief. He gives orders to generals and admirals. He is the one that decides, are we going to bomb somebody? Are we going to send troops somewhere? President Biden recently has announced that he is going to get rid of all the troops in Afghanistan. The due date he said was 9/11, was September 11th. It's just symbolic because that's why we're in Afghanistan for the past 20 years now. But that's his role. One of his roles as commander in chief, he can do that. Now, Trump supporters should like that because President Trump wanted to get rid of troops in Afghanistan too, and he brought the troop numbers down and then increased them and brought them back down. And there's supposed to be, he had a plan also to kind of demilitarize Afghanistan and get American soldiers out of there. The problem, of course, is Afghanistan still isn't perfect. And if we leave, there's worries that the Taliban will come back in and take over again right when we get out of there. But President Biden has basically said, yeah, but if we keep waiting for the perfect time, we'll never leave. There's never a perfect time. And so at some point we're just got to go and hope they make it. Or maybe you leave some kind of small presence there, or you leave some kind of threat that if Taliban return, will come back or something. But that's a commander in chief. I mean, it's a political job. It's there's a lot that goes on to that. But at the end of the day, he's the commander in chief, and he can withdraw troops if he chooses. Next is the role of chief economist. In this role, the president, it's all about the economy. What often happens is president get elected or not elected based on how the economy is doing. Back in 1992, President Bush, the first President Bush, was riding a wave of popularity about 8 months before the election. 92% approval rating for President Bush back in 1992. 92%. The highest President Trump ever got was 53% maybe. Highest President Obama ever got was maybe 60%. I mean, 92% is off the charts. So no one wanted to run against President Bush back in 1992. So who wound up running? Who wound up getting the Democratic nomination? Well, Bill Clinton. Clinton was the governor of Arkansas. Arkansas was one of our lowest performing states. They ranked 49th, 50th, 48th in economy and all this stuff. Arkansas is a small, poor state. And yet Bill Clinton comes out of there as the governor of Arkansas, runs. And part of the reason that he got the nomination is because none of the other big time Democrats wanted to really run against Bush at the time because he was so popular. A lot of it dealt with the war and the invasion of Kuwait and the first war with Iraq and trying to get Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. And it was success, and there was some popularity there. Also, he was riding the coattails of Reagan, and the Republicans were popular. But what happened is he was super popular in January of 92. But by November of 92, by the time the election rolled around, we had hit a recession. Unemployment had skyrocketed. The stock market had collapsed is the wrong word, but it decreased greatly. The economy was in bad shape. It was a recession. And that doomed him. That doomed President Bush, and so he did not win re-election. Bill Clinton beat him, and kind of the rest is history. But the economy is super important, and it often the popularity, the approval rating of a president you can see go hand in hand with how the economy is doing. That's kind of what this graph to a large degree shows. This is how confident are we with the economy. And as it's going down, you'll see popularity going down, approval rating going down. As it's going up, you'll see approval rating tend to go up. It's not exactly in line. This is back in 2001. This is second President Bush, and then up through President Obama. And President Obama comes in right at the beginning of 2009. You can actually see things improving and confidence improving. And this is after the Great Recession right here in 2008. So yeah, things went really bad for a little while there. So anyway, that's it. So chief economist, taxes, profits, prosperity. How it's trying to get the economy going, keeping unemployment low, keeping growth, GDP growing, and how to manage the economy. The president gets a lot of credit or not credit for if the economy is doing good or doing bad. Probably not rightly so. The economy is as a whole, is fairly insulated from any actions that the president might actually do, although taxes matter and things matter. He's the chief of party. So the president is the most important person in his or her political party. President Bush really showed that, right? I mean, President Bush, here he is President Trump, here he is out of office, and he's still probably the most dominant Republican. He's still the most important Republican, even though he's no longer the president. But as president, he certainly had the Republican Party, in his grasp and in total kind of control. So the president has a party role, as a role to promote their party values and lead the party. And then kind of lastly is this idea of chief citizen. He's kind of the most important citizen. Recognizes he's supposed to be the setting the tone for the rest of citizens, representing all citizens, working for everyone's interests, providing moral leadership. This is all what the president is supposed to be, kind of this symbolic, I'm there for everybody. And the actions of the president and the words of the president are supposed to kind of be a guide for citizens, for better or for worse, right? But that's the person that was elected to become the president, and sets a big tone of for the rest of the country. All right, I think that is the last slide. That is. So you should have filled in. You should be able to give examples, either some examples I gave on your sheet, or some of the examples. And let me show this to you. This is what the sheet looks like. So fill in what the job is, what that means, and then provide examples. And that should be what you should be doing. All righty. That's it. You guys take care and talk to you soon.